Starting in the 1950s, and certainly by the 1960s, jazz musicians started improvising using fourth chords. This is often called quartal harmony, indicating that the chords are built in fourth intervals, and that's to distinguish it from tertian, more traditional harmony built in thirds. Now, since actually the turn of the century, the late 19th century going into the 20th century, European classical composers were composing music using fourth chords. As a matter of fact, the piece I was just playing was from the late 1930s, Bela Bartok's Microcosmos, and you can hear the fourth chords throughout. Other composers like Erik Satie, Claude Debussy, Maurice Ravel, Arnold Schoenberg, of course Bela Bartok, Paul Hindemith, all of these composers were using fourth chords. Let me play you an example. This is an early example by Erik Satie from 1891 called Le Fil des Étoiles. In the very opening measures, you can see the preponderance of fourth chords. Here's another example, Claude Debussy, 1901, a very beautiful example of some inverted fourth chords called sarabande. And even in America, with a composer like Charles Ives, we hear this experimentation with fourth chords. Here's the introduction to his song from 1906 called The Cage. Now with jazz musicians, even as early as Gershwin, they loved to write their tertian traditional harmony, but using fourth intervals in the voicing. Now, we're not interested in those kind of voicings. What we're interested more in this video is just the pure use of fourth chords for their own sake without reference to tertian harmony. That we begin to hear hints of with Bill Evans in his collaboration with Miles Davis, 1959, Kind of Blue. And certainly by the time we get to McCoy Tyner and his piano playing with John Coltrane in the 1960s, we're starting to get a improvisational style that involves the combination of fourth chords with pentatonic scales in a really multi-dimensional way. Other piano players pick this up like Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, and a ton of other instrumentalists. In this video, I'm not going to try to be comprehensive or even definitive. I'm just going to try to give you some ideas for how to begin to approach fourth chords and pentatonic scales in your own improvisation. Let's start with a fourth chord. Normally, it's a three-note chord built in all perfect fourths, as in this example, C, F, B flat. Remember, the perfect fourth interval spans 5 half steps. Here it is as a D fourth chord, D, G, C. Just like triads, it can be useful to invert these chords by changing their order. The D fourth chord in root position can be called D7-4, indicating the intervals of the upper notes as compared to the bass note. First inversion results in a 5-4 voicing, and second inversion gives us a 5-2 voicing. All useful variations on the original. Also keep in mind that fourth chords can be built on augmented fourth intervals as well as perfect fourth intervals. Here is a voicing that's built from the bottom up as a perfect fourth and then an augmented fourth. Here's one built on an augmented fourth and then a perfect fourth. Of course, you could invert these variations as well. Notice that the chord built with 2 augmented fourths is not very useful. It results in a chord with just 2 distinct pitches, the C double sharp being enharmonic to the D. Also, in our study, it's not very useful to incorporate diminished fourth intervals, since these are just enharmonic to major third intervals, and that kind of defeats our purpose. Next, let's take a mode, say the D Dorian mode, and make a chart of all the fourth chords that fit in the mode. Of course, you can feel free to construct a chart like this using any mode of your choice. In Dorian, we get a specific set of fourth sonorities that help to define the mode. The 1 chord is perfect, perfect. I usually name these intervals from the bottom to the top. The 2 chord is also perfect, perfect. But notice that the 3 chord is augmented perfect. 4, 5, and 6 are perfect, perfect sonorities, but the 7 chord gives us a perfect augmented fourth chord. The implication here is that if you are composing or improvising in D Dorian, you could draw upon this nice variety of fourth chords for your sonorities. What we often find in this improvisational style is musicians using pentatonic scales as melodic material to lend a kind of free, almost bitonal and multidimensional quality to the music. The basic structure of a pentatonic scale is scale degrees 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 of the major scale. Some people call this the major pentatonic scale because, in fact, there are lots of varieties of pentatonic scales. Another example would be the minor pentatonic scale, built on the scale degrees 1, 2, flat 3, 5, and 6. Now, to keep this video concise, I'm going to limit the discussion to major pentatonic scales, but feel free to expand to other varieties as you do your own experimentation. So first notice, within the D Dorian mode, there are 3 different major pentatonic scales that can be found. One starting on scale degree 3, F pentatonic, one on scale degree 4, that's G pentatonic, and one beginning on scale degree 7, that's C pentatonic. I think the appeal of improvising with pentatonic scales is that their structure offers just enough to suggest a key area, but not enough to restrict the harmony. Notice that pentatonic scales, when compared to major scales, do not have a 4th or a 7th degree. These, of course, are the strong tendency tones of a major scale, and if they are left out of these pentatonic scales, there's a lot of freedom in how they can mix and match with other harmonic materials. Listen to a little improvisation that involves all the fourth chords of D Dorian, as well as a free mixture of the 3 pentatonic scales that also fit into D Dorian. Now, a second approach is to limit the chords to just a few, and then expand the number of matching pentatonic scales. For example, if we just played chord 1 and 2, that's the D 4/7 and the E 4/7, we could write an expanded set of pentatonic scales. We'll consider the scale to fit as long as the notes do not directly conflict with the chord tones. For example, the E-flat pentatonic scale would not fit. Most of the notes are okay, but the E-flat comes into direct conflict with the E natural in the E 4th chord. So the matching pentatonic scales would include those scales on D, F, G, B-flat, and C. Listen to this improvisation that freely matches these 2 chords with this set of pentatonic scales. Now finally, for the most freedom, we could consider just one fourth chord and develop an even greater expanded set of matching pentatonic scales. Again, our only concern will be to construct major pentatonic scales that have no notes that come into direct conflict with the notes of the D chord, that is, the D, G, and C pitches of the D fourth chord. This set includes pentatonic scales built on D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, and C. Did you notice that the A flat pentatonic scale, that is the scale built on scale degree flat 5, is in that list? Now that's a bit of a stretch, being a tritone away from D, but if you think about it, none of the pitches of that scale, A flat, B flat, C, E flat, F, come into direct conflict with the D fourth chord, D, G, C. Now, it might be a bit limiting to solo on just one fourth chord, so I'm going to move freely with the fourth chords moving up and down by various intervals without real concern for staying in a given mode, and then create melodic material that matches the chord I'm playing at any given moment. The result is a rather chromatic improvisation. That would sound very good over a bass pedal tone. Now remember, I used only major pentatonic scales in my examples. You can greatly expand the palette by introducing minor pentatonics into the mix, which you should go ahead and try. Finally, I'm going to give you a few ideas on how to make your pentatonic scales sound interesting. The possibilities are endless, but here's one effective approach. Take the major pentatonic scale and create an ascending sequence using 4-note groupings. So for C pentatonic, play C, D, E, G, the first 4 notes. Then go up a step and play D, E, G, A. Continue the sequential pattern while staying within the pentatonic scale. Now you've got a nice sounding improvisational pattern. You could change the order of the notes in each grouping of the pattern for more variety. And here's a systematic way to get some different orderings. Shift the rhythm so that the first beat is on the second note of the pattern. Here's what it looks like when shifted. Notice that the result is quite different in its effect. Let's do it again. Now shift it so that the first beat is on the third note of the pattern. Finally, shift to the fourth note of the pattern. When you are done practicing these, you should move on to descending sequences. Here's the pattern with 4-note groupings over the pentatonic scale, but going down. Again, try shifting the beat to the second note. Now to the third note. And now to the fourth note. This is a good process for just about any sequence you come up with. For more on sequences, groupings, and rhythmic displacement, make sure to watch the video on Chick Corea and my analysis of his solo. Well, there you go. Now it's time for some experimentation on your part.